Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, trade tensions are easing. China is suspending part of its rare earth export controls, including curbs on lithium batteries and super hard materials. Newborn babies. Some are reportedly being used as part of the Chinese Communist regime's human gold mines for organ sourcing. Investigative reports have uncovered an underground transplant industry in China. We bring you in-depth coverage.
Infant donor kidneys, their quality is actually very high. The donors we use are premature infants, some of them only a few hours old when the procedure was done.
Dutch chipmaker Nexperia is resuming some shipments from China to other countries. The company had previously been caught in the crossfire of the U.S.-China trade dispute. And the U.S. will pause fees on Chinese-built ships, calling on American ports for a year. But officials say U.S. shipbuilding efforts will press on. President Trump is deepening ties with China's neighbors in Central Asia to counter Beijing's growing influence in the region. Trade tensions easing for now. On Friday, China said it was suspending a range of rare earth export controls imposed on October 9th. The move includes expanded curbs on certain rare earth materials and equipment, as well as lithium batteries and super hard materials.
China suspended expanded export controls on rare earths materials and equipment on Friday. The country's Commerce Ministry said increased curbs on lithium battery and superhard materials were also stopped. Beijing had imposed the measures just under a month ago, but it said Friday's suspensions were effective immediately and would apply through to November next year. The announcement confirmed and formalized an agreement reached after US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping agreed a trade truce last month. Industry sources had earlier told Reuters China has begun designing a new rare earth licensing regime. They added it could speed up shipments but likely won't lead to a complete rollback of restrictions as hoped for by Washington. The sources said Chinese authorities told some rare earth exporters they will be able to apply for new streamlined permits in the future. The export curbs have become Beijing's strongest leverage in its trade rivalry with Washington. China produces more than 90% of the world's processed rare earths and rare earth magnets. The ingredients are key for products ranging from cars to missiles.
China's rare earth exports rose 9% in October compared to September, marking the first increase after 3 consecutive months of decline. Newborn babies are seen as the future of families, but in communist China, many of them were born as part of the regime's human gold mines. Investigative reports found an underground transplant industry in China that's built around harvesting organs from infants for huge profits. And just a warning, some viewers may find the following content disturbing.
The concept of infant or child organ transplants is not new. Younger patients can typically only receive smaller-sized organ transplants. American doctors normally conduct 500 to 600 child-to-organ transplant operations annually. In just one category, child liver transplants, China's yearly cases already double those of the U.S., reaching about 1,000 each year. That's on top of a growing trend. Child or infant organs in China are also used to service adults. A doctor from a top-ranking hospital in southern China's Sichuan province openly praised the benefits of using a child's organ in an adult's body.
Infant donor kidneys, their quality is actually very high. There are several reasons for this. First, their kidneys are much more resistant to heat and lack of blood supply compared to adult donor kidneys. Second, these kidneys have a remarkable regenerative ability. After being transplanted into a recipient, they can grow rapidly in a short period of time. According to our research data, within about 6 to 9 months, they can grow to nearly the size of an adult kidney.
The number of documented child transplants in China has seen steep increase. That's despite the declining birth rate nationwide. Take Shanghai's Renji Hospital. Between 2006 and 2017, it took 11 years to complete its first 1,000 child liver transplants. But it quickly completed another 1,000 operations within 2 years. The time period had shrunk by over 5 times. As of 2022, this hospital alone has conducted 3,000 cases of child liver transplants. It was ranked the world's top liver transplant center for 9 consecutive years. The data was reported by Chinese state-run media. Besides the surging numbers, the Chinese doctor disclosed that his hospital had taken organs from preterm babies, some of whom had been outside the womb for only a few hours.
So far, we've performed more than 20 children double kidney transplants, all of them for adult recipients. The donors we use are premature infants, some of them only a few hours old when the procedure was done.
It drives people to wonder, how could they complete the donor-recipient matching process, get parental consent, and secure approval from the Ethics Council all within such a short time frame? The matching process typically takes weeks or even months. Whistleblowers from Chinese military hospitals revealed a horrifying phenomenon. More infants are being brought to life only to have their organs harvested later. That's according to 2 recent investigative reports by a U.S.-based human rights group. The group has been investigating and raising awareness regarding China's live organ harvesting schemes for more than 2 decades. The reports state that using the patient's relatives or their own sperm, combined with a selected surrogate pregnancy, it produces infants whose organs are considered ideal for transplantation. Women who carry these infants include prostitution workers, surrogate mothers, and others. The report strongly suspects that detained female Falun Gong practitioners are among the victims. The faith group has been brutally persecuted by the CCP for over 2 decades. The report also stated that in some cases, women are forced to get pregnant multiple times a year to give birth to preterm infants in order to expedite the process. Underground infant centers are reportedly especially large in China's Shandong, Henan, and Sichuan provinces. Another Chinese military doctor fled the country. Zheng Ji admits that he was also aware of infant lives being transplanted to Chinese regime officials in Shenyang. Those sources are all pointing in one direction. The industry is allowed to exist and expand under the directives of the Chinese Communist Party high-level officials. 2 months ago, Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Russian leader Vladimir Putin were caught on a hot mic discussing having endless organs to achieve longevity.
Back to trade tensions between China and the West, high-end semiconductors are grabbing the world's attention, but low-end chips can be critical too. Chipmaker Nexperia resumed some shipments on Friday. They're not cutting edge, but they are vital for producing cars and other electronics. Nexperia is a Dutch company that was sold to a Chinese company years ago. Some of its chips are currently produced in China. Their supply has been disrupted by a dispute between Amsterdam and Beijing amid broader U.S.-China trade tensions. The Dutch government moved to de-risk and seized control of Nexperia back in September. But Beijing pushed back by blocking exports of Nexperia's China-made chips to other countries. That led to headaches for many Western automakers. The crisis is easing as Beijing lifts the export ban on some of these chips. This move is reportedly part of a trade deal that CCP leader Xi Jinping recently made with President Trump. However, Nexperia warned customers on Thursday that it couldn't guarantee the quality of chips made in China after October 13th. The U.S. will halt fees on Chinese-built ships calling at American ports for a year, starting next Monday. The pause is part of the agreement reached between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping during their trade talks. In addition, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative has proposed pausing tariffs on Chinese port equipment imports, including ship-to-shore cranes and chassis. In a notice, the U.S. Trade Representative said the administration will negotiate with China over its dominance in shipbuilding. The notice also stated that Washington will continue efforts to revitalize domestic shipbuilding. Meanwhile, China has agreed to pause retaliatory fees on American ships as part of the agreement. A Hawaii-based ocean shipping company said it has paid over $6 million in port fees to China since mid-October. The U.S. began charging port fees on Chinese ships following President Trump's pledge to counter China's dominance in shipbuilding. China currently controls half of the world's commercial ship production. U.S. shipyards have been in decline for decades. Back in 1975, America had more than 70 commercial ships under construction or on order every year. Today, that number has plummeted down to just 5 annually. If Beijing invaded Taiwan, would Japan defend it? On Friday, the new Japanese prime minister put it plainly, yes. Japan's Asahi News said Takaichi made the remarks while responding to a question in parliament. The question concerned whether a Taiwan contingency involving a Chinese naval blockade would qualify as a survival-threatening situation for Japan. Takaichi said, quote, "If warships are used and other armed actions are involved, I believe this could constitute a survival-threatening situation." Under Japanese law, such a situation allows the country to use force to defend an ally, but only if there's no other way to resolve the problem. In this scenario, the ally is Taiwan. Coming up, Chinese fast fashion retailer Shein facing more troubles after childlike sex dolls and weapons were found being sold on its platform. Both the French government and the European Union are on the move. President Trump is deepening ties with China's neighbors in Central Asia to counter Beijing's growing influence in the region. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. New updates on Shein in France. France launched proceedings on Wednesday to suspend the Chinese fast fashion retailer after childlike sex dolls and weapons were found being sold on its site. The suspension will remain in effect until Shein can prove its platform complies with French law. The case has also drawn the attention of the European Union.
Shein said it sanctioned the sellers of the sex dolls and implemented a worldwide ban on the sale of such products on its site. The company also decided to temporarily suspend its marketplace in France to review and strengthen how the third-party sellers operate. Lawmakers also pointed out listings on Shein's site for weapons, including brass knuckles, which are banned in France, and an axe. The controversy comes as Shein's new shop in the 19th century BHV department store causes uproar that goes beyond the latest concerns. Politicians and retailers say the online giant has an unfair advantage and has eroded French high streets. Though on Wednesday, many French shoppers said it was a bad idea to suspend Shein in the country.
That would be a blow for a lot of people. I think financially, and actually because it's so vast. They have so much choice on the platform.
Following news of the planned suspension, Frédéric Marlan, president of SGM, the company that owns BHV, called on Shein's leaders to set higher standards.
This whole situation is absolutely terrible. It's despicable. I've said it several times. I strongly encourage, and I'm still having discussions following this morning's announcements about the bladed weapons being sold on the platform. I strongly encourage the leaders of Shein to establish rules and establish them quickly. What Shein's marketplace is doing is not right.
The finance ministry said it would suspend Shein's entire website in France. Not just the marketplace if banned products continue to be found for sale. Lawmakers summoned the firm to a hearing in Parliament on November 18, and the company accepted. The European Commission contacted Shein on Wednesday about the latest reports, a spokesperson said, but has not opened a formal investigation.
We now turn our attention to Central Asia, where President Trump is deepening ties with the region in response to Beijing's growing influence. He announced new trade deals and an expansion of the Abraham Accords during a meeting with the region's leaders at the White House on Thursday. Here's more on that story.
A high-level gathering at the White House yesterday. President Trump welcoming the leaders of 5 Central Asian nations for talks focused on trade, energy, and critical minerals as the U.S. competes with Russia and China in the region. The big headline, Kazakhstan joining the Abraham Accords, expanding the Middle East peace framework launched during Trump's first term.
I'm also delighted to report that Kazakhstan has officially agreed, and that's official now, as of about 15 minutes ago. A tremendous country with a tremendous leader has officially joined the Abraham Accords.
The move marks the first addition to the accord since Trump returned to office and extends the pact's reach into Central Asia. Kazakhstan will join the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, though it has had full diplomatic relations with Israel since 1992. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who joined the talks, described the expanded Abraham Accords as reshaping economic alliances beyond just Israel.
It's not just with Israel, it's with all the other countries that are part of the accord. You're now creating a partnership that brings special and unique economic development on all sorts of issues that they can work on together.
Trump also touted new trade and investment deals. On Truth Social, the president announced Uzbekistan would be purchasing and investing almost $35 billion in the U.S., growing to more than $100 billion over the next 10 years, focusing on minerals, aviation, auto parts, and other technology. Kazakhstan's president also announced trade agreements between American and Kazakh companies worth billions.
During my visit alone, our businesses are concluding deals worth over $17 billion, paving the way for even greater B2B partnership.
Trump used the moment to contrast his foreign policy with that of his predecessors, saying Central Asia has been overlooked for too long.
Sadly, previous American presidents neglected this region completely. It's an unbelievable region, and by the way, it happens to be an extremely wealthy region, too. But we are fixing that mistake, and I'm committed to making America's partnership with each of these countries stronger than ever before.
Central Asian countries are rich in minerals and may offer an alternative to China for sourcing critical minerals. Kazakhstan's president praised Trump's role in what he called a new era of cooperation.
You are the great leader, statesman, sent by heaven to bring common sense and traditions that we all share and value back into the United States policy.
Trump framed the summit as part of a broader foreign policy agenda centered on peace through strength.
I want peace through strength, but we want peace all over the world, and we're very close to getting it.
Trump also said that within a year and a half, U.S. dependence on China for minerals will no longer be an issue.
Kazakhstan will soon join the Abraham Accords. We spoke to David Wormser, a Middle East affairs analyst at the Center for Security Policy, to discuss how the move could strengthen U.S. and Israeli interests. He also explained how it might expand the accords to new countries and counter China's growing influence in the region. David, thank you so much for joining us as always. Now, this is seen as a mostly symbolic move, given that Kazakhstan has had diplomatic relations with Israel since 1992. But what do you make of this announcement?
Well, first of all, it does build a little bit of momentum. I wouldn't say it's a massive amount of momentum, but it's good. It's good. It's the right direction. In the Middle East, when anything goes the right direction, it's a good day. But I put a little more importance to it than simply validating something that was done already in 1992. I believe that there is a block emerging. The last day that J.D. Vance was in Israel about 2 weeks ago, he said something about hopefully Israel can expand the Abraham Accords. And with the expansion of the Abraham Accords, we form a strategic bloc that then begins to anchor American and Western interests that allow us to disengage from the area to some extent. And I think now when you're seeing Kazakhstan is an important country in terms of energy, in terms of all sorts of things, and it's a big country, I think that you see the bloc that J.D. Vance is talking about is expanding, and it's beginning to gain real anchor.
And digging into that, officials said Kazakhstan's participation in the Abraham Accords would enhance their bilateral trade and cooperation with Israel. That is similar to what the Wilson Center said happened to the other countries that signed on to the Abraham Accords before. Talk to us about how the Abraham Accords have boosted people-to-people relationships in private and civil sectors.
Yeah, there's no doubt Israel is one of the hotbeds of innovation and industrial capability in terms of the new economies, in terms of what makes a new economy, namely high tech and so on and so forth. And yet in a lot of these countries, you have either pockets of interest in that, or you have money coming from other sources like oil and so forth. And they're looking to hook up with Israel so that they can get synergy to leverage the money they make with raw materials and other assets to essentially kick their economies up to a higher level. And on the private sector, private basis, people want to make more money with the money they have. So Israel's becoming a real sort of incubator for the whole region. And Kazakhstan's a different region. It's Central Asia, but it's really bordering the Middle East. And it also is the same. It's also a lot of old trade patterns. Kazakhstan's a very strategic relation. It's on the Silk Road. These are sorts of large-scale corridors that really are to our advantage if they fall to peace and begin to establish a basis. And finally, it's a blocking maneuver to China.
On that note, looking ahead, in your view, what other countries could we see sign on to the Abraham Accords during President Trump's second term?
Well, Indonesia. Indonesia is the big one right now. If Indonesia joins, it's the most populous Muslim country in the world. It's a country Israel trusts to some extent, which means they could form a real good basis for peacekeeping forces that the Israelis trust to put into Gaza or elsewhere. So Indonesia, I think, is the big one, but I think Indonesia also could provide cover for the other big one, and the other big one is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia doesn't want to lurch into peace without the Palestinian issue moving a bit further. It doesn't want to feel alone in holding the bag. But if Indonesia joins as the largest Muslim country in the world, this kind of gives Saudi Arabia cover, and it could help nudge them across the finish line.
And David, in terms of the Gaza Strip, we are seeing multiple reports that a number of Hamas terrorists are stuck in a tunnel network behind Israeli lines, and that the Trump officials are proposing that Israel use this crisis to develop a model to have Hamas disarm. Now, Israelis have yet to accept, and NTD cannot independently verify these reports. But what are your thoughts on this issue?
It's a tricky issue because clearly the Israelis, under an Egyptian proposal, would allow the 200 or so terrorists to depart from the tunnels and out to where Hamas is, or out of the area, but they would have to give up their weapons along the way. But for Israel, this is tough because these are deadly killers, many of whom tortured, raped the hostages, killed many of them, held these hostages. The Israelis want to bring them to justice. There's a lot of pressure on that. There's also the other issue, pressure in the other direction on Israel. There may be dead hostages in those tunnels still, and Israel is afraid that if they just, say, fill the tunnels with concrete and kill the terrorists, they may lose those dead hostages forever. So there's a lot of cross pressures, but there is a model here, true, where I think the administration's pushing it, which is let them go to outside the area, but they give up their weapons, and that's a good model for the rest of Hamas to give up and go into exile without their weapons and give the weapons up to an international force.
Well, David Wormser, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you soon.